she Instagram messaged me a couple of months ago. And it was one of those DM, the direct messages. And I initially saw her name pop up on my inbox. And I was first really confused. I haven't spoken to Shez for over 7 years now. What exactly could she be wanting to talk to me about? So then, me being the curious soul I was, I clicked into my inbox and this picture popped up. This is a picture of me, Mandy Kota, back when she was 14 years old. Now, is anyone in the audience 14 at the moment? Oh yeah, Emma. Anyone who has a 14-year-old in their life? Cool, yeah. So this was me when I was 14, and you could say life was very different back then for me. I remember back in high school, I was considered to be the very shy girl. So shy that any time we were asked to do a 2-minute public speech in front of the class, I would be freaking out. And this inability to express myself in front of the class, it actually showed up in other areas of my life. It showed up when I was with my girlfriends. It showed up when I was with my family. And it also showed up as, needing to participate more in classroom discussions. Those were the 4 words I would constantly get as an area I had to improve on during any of my parent-teacher interviews. I guess for me, when I was a 14-year-old girl, I found it difficult to actually express what I was going through. I had all these breakdowns and insecurities that I just hid behind this mask. I had insecurities about my body anytime that I had to go swimming in front of other girls. I was really nervous to actually voice my opinion when I was with my friends. And I found it really difficult to navigate through how to actually have a healthy relationship with a guy. And the thing for me was that I was content. I was content with bottling it all up, acting like everything's okay. If you were to ask someone from my year, what did you think of Mandy Kota? They probably would say, oh, she was a happy, nice girl. And I was really good at putting on that mask. I guess what you could say is, I survived high school, but I didn't necessarily thrive. It was really interesting. After probably 5 years after I left high school, I was sitting on my bed one day and I allowed my mind to wander. We have those days. And I started to reflect on my high school years, and I started to think about what it was like for me and also what it was like for my girlfriends. And all these, sometimes when you start to think of things, you notice I started to get flashbacks and memories of things that I didn't necessarily see before. I had flashbacks and memories of overhearing conversations from other girls saying how they heard other girls on this diet where they would have 1 apple a day to maintain their figure. I remember flashbacks of girls coming into school with bandages on their wrist as a result of self-harming. There were all these issues that were seen as toxic, yet parents, teachers, the school felt helpless in terms of knowing how to actually tackle this issue. So what ended up happening was that no one really spoke about it. And I guess for me, as I matured through my career after leaving high school, I was reflecting all these shared experiences I had during my high school years, and I started thinking about the research that's currently out there with teenage girls and mental health. And that's when I had this moment where I realized that these issues that exist within teenage girls didn't just happen within my community. It was actually happening at a larger scale, and it's actually present within our Australian culture. Data by Mission Australia and the Black Dog Institute reported that teenage girls are twice more likely to experience anxiety and depression than their male counterparts. Also, 15% of all Australian women will experience some form of an eating disorder in their lifetime. So often these issues are discussed as the problem, but I fundamentally believe that they're actually a symptom of the problem, and that these can be entirely preventable if we started to look at it through a preventative lens. One of my dear friends, Dr. Anna Rubinstein, he did a TED Talk back in 2013 on a rite of passage. Has anyone heard of this TED Talk before? No, you've all got some homework to do. And it was really interesting. He was talking about this study that was done by RMIT, and it was a study that was a subjective wellbeing study where thousands of people were interviewed between 12 to 70 years of age, and they were asked a series of questions that reflected their life. And the results were really interesting. So here is a wellness indicator graph. And what you can see on the y-axis, the level of satisfaction, it actually drops from 14 to 16 years of age, 14 to 18. And for Anna, he came from a medical background, so he wanted to see how could we avoid this dip from happening. So then for him, he started to look at Western medicine, and he couldn't find an answer there. So then he took a step back and started to actually think about, what do traditional societies do? And that's when he stumbled across a rite of passage. So a rite of passage is a process that a lot of traditional cultures use to help to mark a transition into a new stage of life. And today I want to talk specifically about a rite of passage for teenage girls and what that could actually look like for our girls. How can we truly empower our girls to become unstoppable women? And so often I find that it's within this drop between 14 and 18 that, girls are noticing things changing physically with their bodies. And, they might start to notice some things hormonally as well. They might get a bit moody from time to time. And, well, I can speak for myself. But the thing is, all these things are happening to them physically, and they're developing as a woman, but they may not mentally be prepared for that. And that's what sometimes leads to this significant drop in satisfaction. So I guess, for me personally, after working with probably over 500 teenage girls now, I've come to realize two things. The power of creating a safe, non-judgmental space, but also using a rite of passage throughout that. And that's what I kind of want to share with you today. Some of the 3 core elements that I know Anna's spoken about with a rite of passage. So the first one is sharing stories. So often how a rite of passage works is that we separate girls from their everyday life. And usually with a lot of these traditional societies, they take them out into nature. And what ends up happening is that mums or healthy female role models in these girls' lives get to share stories. They get to share stories of what life was like as a teenage girl. What were their successes? What were their struggles? Because one thing I've realized is that teenage girls don't cope well when they've been told what to do. That actually makes them more anxious and frustrated. And when we as women can model that, that actually gives girls permission to actually start to share what's really going on for them. Number 2 is creating challenge. So usually with any mental rite of passage, you have to go through some form of challenge in order to go to that next step of life. And for teenage girls, what I found, the actual challenge is more of a mental and emotional challenge. And what that is usually in my programs is that I get girls to take their mask off, their mask of perfection, and actually share what's really going on. And the reason why I say that's a challenge is because girls are wired for connection. Their peer groups, their girlfriends are seen as their lifeline. And the idea of, showing them like their true selves and being vulnerable can actually be really risky to their reputation, their image, their social status at school. So what happens in my programs is that sometimes girls actually feel comfortable enough to share what's going on for them. And sometimes it's things that they haven't actually shared before. I want to just share a quick story from one of the programs that I've run recently, and let's call her Sally. Sally was a beautiful 15-year-old girl, and I was really inspired by Sally. She demonstrated incredible leadership qualities, and we were at this part of the program where we get girls to have the option to share any challenges that they're currently struggling with. And Sally, being the leader that she is, she took initiative and she put her hand up and she said, "Mandy, I'll go first." I'm like, "Sure, Sally." So then Sally just started to share that she had a family history of a lot of illnesses, and she's learned to become resilient, and she's developed very strong character traits. And I acknowledged Sally. I was like, "Sally, thank you for sharing, and thank you for your courage to go first." And at the time, it's probably another 30 other girls in the circle. And then after Sally shared her challenge, other girls within the circle started to share their challenges, and it started to get a little bit more real. Some girls started to share the pressure and stress they put on themselves with academics, and then also just other things like parental expectations and feeling uncomfortable, not knowing how to navigate through that. And then I remember looking back at the circle and I saw Sally's hand was back up. She's like, Mandy, I really need to share something else. I need to get something off my chest. And I said, sure, Sally, what is it? And she said, Mandy, what I'm about to share, I've never actually shared with anyone else before. And that is, I'm actually struggling with an eating disorder. In that moment, I saw her shoulders drop, and you could just see this weight lifted off her shoulders. She's been bottling that up for years. I looked around the circle to see all the other girls, and all the girls had tears in their eyes and a little bit of snot coming out of their nose. There was so much love, courage, authenticity, and trust built within that group of girls that day. And they really were remarkable, and I saw them as really powerful women. The third part of a rite of passage that is so important and I feel is missing in a lot of today's culture is honouring girls for their uniqueness. And why I say that is because girls are so fixated, they're worried, they really want to fit in, and they will do anything and everything to feel beautiful, look beautiful, etc. And what's out there in the world currently on social media, we see the Kardashians. Girls feel like they need to look like the Kardashians to feel beautiful and valued. They feel like they want to be like those high-end influencers they have on their Instagram feed. But one thing the rite of passage gives girls permission to be is actually themselves. To be themselves, they don't have to be anything else because they're the only person that can be their true selves. Through these rite of passages, girls go from comparing themselves to other peers in their year to actually creating a sense of community and realizing that no matter the fact that all these girls are in different social groups, they all want the same thing. And similar to that circle that was created with Sally, there was a sense of community that was created. Another thing that girls realize is that their image is not what drives their identity. It's actually leading towards values and how they live their life is that what makes them who they are. And another really important point is girls coming to these programs, like there's a sense of acceptance. They need to have peer group acceptance, and they leave with self-acceptance for who they are. And I guess my final point today is that teenage girls don't need to be told what to do, who to be, or anything like that. It's actually reminding them day in and day out that who they really are is what makes them beautiful. And it's from that place that we can create a foundation to really empower our teenage girls to become unstoppable women. Thank you.
The Hero Roundtables are the global events that ask the question, what is a hero? You've just seen one hero talk. To find more and join the conversation, visit our website or social media.